Okay, so how do I get these? And what if I'm waiting for something else? There were over 47,000 people on our waiting list statewide for these waivers. Each county board maintained their own waiting list. But when we went to the State House to ask for extra money, it became challenging. We'd say, oh, there are 47,000 people on our waiting list, but some of them already have waivers. And we did this survey a couple years ago, and half the people we called didn't know what they were waiting for. You know, that became really challenging. Or the people at the top of the waiting list, which tend to be senior citizens, think they're waiting for a group home. That's not been the case for 20 years. A waiver is not a place, it's a funding stream. So many of our older parents were getting calls from the county saying, your number's up, we have a waiver available for you. And the 85-year-old mom would say, no, I'm not ready. I don't want it. I don't need it. Also, that generation was someone else I'm doing just fine, someone else. Well, our old system said they stayed at the top of the list. And every time a waiver became available, the county would still have to call them. And in some counties like this county, there were 50 people at the top of the list. And they had to keep calling them and calling them. So we needed to fix the list. We needed to make it so that the people on the list really had a need. And they knew what they were getting. It was a change. So as of September 1st, for the next 2 years, year and a half to 2 years, the county boards have to go through everyone on the waiting list and do an assessment of their need. I actually
Gary,
brought the, yes.
We got it up here on the.
Oh, okay. So you can pick these up after, but I've actually got the guidance memo to the counties on how they're supposed to do it and the assessment tool. That if you're on a waiting list, so even if you're on a level 1 and you want an IO waiver, someone is going to come to you and do this assessment to determine what your need is. Do you need something right now, or do you need something in the next year? Right now means in the next 30 days, you're going to need something. Or can you make it through the next year? If you say, I don't need it right now, and probably I'm okay, you're going to go off the list. That doesn't mean you can't go back on when you have a need. But my caution to families is, this is not the time to brag about your kid. What we get in the disability system is based on what your child can't do and doesn't have. You know, if you've got a young adult and they've got a savings account with $2,500 in it, you're not going to be eligible for Medicaid. You've got to prepare as families and shelter their income. And the county can help you. There are lots of ways, and there are legal ways. No one is hiding money. There are a lot of legal ways to shelter your income. You've got some of the best attorneys in this area that can do it. And we can help you find them if you want. It's either creating trust funds. There's a new program called a stable account. There's Medicaid buy-in. There's all sorts of stuff and methods for sheltering income. It's perfectly legal because Congress and the state legislature knows that we need the help. But because we're in that pool with everyone else, there are ways to protect it. But don't brag about your kids when this assessment comes in. I don't want to offend people, but if you've got a teenage son who is masturbating in the family room, you got to tell them about it. You know, you've got to tell them because there may be questions, can you go to the bathroom independently? Well, if your son hasn't pulled his pants up in the last 10 years coming out of the bathroom, no, he cannot go independently. You know, practice with your friends about how to express your need. Many of our parents are so overwhelmed, they don't even know what they need. You know, some moms will tell me, Gary, I haven't taken a shower by myself in the last 10 years. You need help. You need to be able to take a shower by yourself. That's not normal to have your son sitting on the toilet while you're in the shower. And that's what we go through, but our challenges become normal to us. And the system has to see our kids like we see them on Saturday night when the meds have worn off. That's the kind of way, you're not hiding anything. It's just that while we're trained in the educational system to build on the positive, what we get in the DD system is you're going to get this if you express your negatives. So keep all of the stuff you'd like to burn, keep it in a drawer somewhere, keep it in the back of your head somewhere, but keep documentation. You have to be able to prove that your child became disabled before the age of 22. We have more and more people that are homeschooled now or don't want the label of disability. You gotta have the label to get the service. You know, it's not a, my doctor thinks my child has autism, they got autism. Asperger's doesn't count anymore. They're on the autism spectrum. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Where would you advise parents to go to get the language about what services that they need to request?
I don't think you need to even define the service. You just have to express your needs. So we get in, because we're so used to being at Children's Hospital or the Cleveland Clinic, we're used to talking to doctors in these medical terms. You need to talk about the need, not the therapy. But my kid's banging his head and he's gonna break through the wall. My husband and I are getting a divorce and our family's falling apart because of my child. This assessment tool for the first time talks about the stability of the family and the parent. I didn't want an SSA coming into my house and determining whether I was a good dad or not. But we had many, many older parents who were not willing to say, I've got a son with cerebral palsy and I can't lift him anymore. You know, they weren't willing to say that. The privates is, you know, you don't want to talk about stuff outside the family. Or my son with a disability is beating up on his kid's sister and I'm worrying Children's Services is going to take them both. You have to, it's real, so it's not my child needs behavioral therapy. My child is exhibiting these behaviors. They run away. You know, they're beating on me. My family's falling apart. You have to, so what the county can do when they do this assessment is I just need to spend some time with my wife. And I think once a month, if I can go out for dinner with my wife and someone can come in and take care of my kids, the county in this new system can say, we've got some local funds available. And if just using local dollars under family support services can keep your family together, we've got a way to do that. We can fund locally and you don't have to do the waiver. Yes.
Would that local funding be based on family income?
Yeah, it usually is, but not always. Not always. This gives the counties a lot of latitude in what they can do. Most counties don't allow you to use local funds and waiver funds, but it's totally up to the county to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to keep the family together. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that? Local funds, is that funds from your county?
Yeah, local levy dollars.
Okay.
Yeah. And every county receives a little bit of state funding to help them out. They get state funding or something called Title 20, which is federal funds, that they have quite a bit of discretion. They have total discretion in the use of their local levy dollars and how they want to spend those.
Go ahead.
How do you know how your county's funds are set up?
Well, you should have a caseworker, which is a service and support administrator. Or what I advise families to do is every county has a county board of developmental disabilities. It's actually a board of community citizens, and they have monthly meetings. Go to their meetings. That's where they discuss the funds. That's where they approve their budget. And every county has to approve an annual plan. And they're begging people to come and provide comment on that plan.
Yeah, those are open public meetings.
So go to those meetings. We're reorganizing our families. I mean, the system was created by families getting together and going to all of these meetings. They're an hour long, sometimes 2 hours. Go. Every county board has a website. The county board meetings are on the website. At least 3 members of the county board have to be people with disabilities or family members. They're appointed by the county commissioners and the probate judge. They're your representatives as well as the other county board members. They approve the budget. They approve how many waivers each county is going to request from the state. So she's asking, what do you do if they take your child off the waiting list?
Yes.
You go over into sort of like a parking lot. And when you have a need, then you go back on the list. It's supposed to be pretty fluid. So if you don't think you were able to express your need in that meeting, ask for another assessment. And we'll give you a copy of what they're going to be asking.
Right, we have the handouts, and also the website is fixthelist.info. So if you have, write that down. If you have questions, there's a lot of kind of scenarios on that website.
So the county can just offer you county-funded services to help you through the day. So many parents are saying, well, what, I've got a child graduating from high school and they need something to do during the day. That's your need. It used to be, I need a workshop. Now it's, I need a day service. That can get you, depending on your county and their priorities. Remember the 60-40. If I'm in Trumbull County, chances are I'm going to automatically get a waiver. Trumbull County, like Mahoning, has adopted a policy. Everyone that's getting adult services is going to have a waiver. Why did they do that? Because we want to serve people in Trumbull County, but also the feds are paying 60% of the cost. It makes sense because we've got the local funds to help you, but if I put you on a waiver, the federal government's putting 60% in.
As long as you qualify.
As long as you qualify. So one of the, there are tricks. Now, they're not tricks, but if you refer to your loved one as a child with high functioning autism, stop doing that. High functioning is code for does not qualify. Remember, it's based on what you can't do and don't have. High functioning becomes challenging. I don't want to teach people how to, not qualify. But what I want to teach families is how to honestly express your child's needs. To survive in this world as a family member, we have to think the positive.
Right.
This is not based on the positive. So it's not IQ based, it's based on the ticket to ride the waiver is something called a level of care. So you have to qualify financially for Medicaid, but you have to function at a certain level. We can even eventually get you, the state has the website on the level of care assessment. How do I function? So I mentioned the home care waiver. The home care waiver through Job and Family Services is for people that have medical issues or had the motorcycle accident, a spinal cord injury. There are a lot of preemies that are coming out of Children's Hospital that have the home care waiver because they need a lot of medical and nursing care. Once they get better, they no longer qualify for the waiver because they don't meet the level of care. If I've got Down syndrome, I'm always going to have Down syndrome, but Down syndrome doesn't get me the waiver. How I function gets me the waiver. We have people with Down syndrome who don't qualify for waivers because they don't function like a stereotypical person with Down syndrome. They're driving a car, they read and write, they can get around their community, so they got blue eyes too. They just happen to have Down syndrome. Most of the people in special education, most of the children in special ed are not going to qualify for county board services or waivers. If I have a learning disability, it doesn't get me in the door. If I can't get around my community and I can't socialize, I'm probably going to qualify. But having said that, we have people on waivers that are going to college because of their physical limitations or because the autism interferes so much in their social interaction, they're functioning at a lower level. But you can have an IQ of 160 and qualify for a waiver, have an IQ of 70 and not qualify for a waiver because of how you function. I'm not telling you not to teach your kids things, but know their functioning is going to determine whether they're qualified or whether they continue to qualify. It's very rare that any of our kids get disenrolled from a waiver. But once you have a waiver, you have to use it. We had 800 people last year that were at risk statewide of losing their waiver because they hadn't used it. So once you get a waiver, you have to use it. If you don't use it, the system thinks you don't need it. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Yes?
You got to have those real conversations too, right? Because sometimes somebody's not using a waiver because they can't find a provider or something like that. So you've got to have those conversations, like Gary's saying. Have those real life conversations, express those needs. You're still going to have those dreams, but you still have to have those real conversations because our system's funding is based on what you can't do.
Yes, go ahead.
If you're already on a waiver,
Okay.
do they do the assessment again, like at the redetermination?
Yes, so that answers this lady's question as well. So I'm on the level 1 waiver, and I've been going to sessions for years saying, Gary told me the IO waiver is the platinum card, so I want the platinum card. Well, if I have $5,300 in my level 1 waiver, and I'm only spending $1,000 of it a year, and I'm doing just fine, you're not gonna go off the list for the IO waiver, because your needs are being met. Okay, and that doesn't mean blow the 5,300. If your needs are not being met on the level 1 waiver, the county has an obligation to do something about that. Whether that's to give you an IO waiver or whether to give you some local funds to help you out. The county has that flexibility. But if I'm on the level 1, and that was part of the problem, we had 47,000 people on a waiting list, but many of them already had a waiver. They were just waiting for another waiver. So the new law says if you're on a waiver and you're doing just fine, you're not going to be waiting for the next waiver. If it gets to the point, I'm on the level 1 waiver, but my family's doing a lot of work for me, but my parents are tragically killed on the turnpike, now I got a need. And the county can move me up to the IO. But if I don't need more services, I won't get them. You have to know in the discussion, though, the ARC believes there should be one waiver and a valid instrument to determine where I'm at in that waiver. Right now, we've got firewalls between each of the waivers. We've got level 1, we've got self, and we've got the individual options waiver. And there are firewalls so that you just can't automatically move up. We believe there should be one waiver and a valid instrument to determine the funding I get. That makes sense to us. And it makes sense mostly to the county boards as well. But we're not there yet. We think sometime in the next administration, we'll combine the level 1 and the self waivers. It was something this administration wanted to do and never got around to it. That we'll combine the 2 lower funded waivers, and then we'll deal with the IO later.